Hello, everyone, and welcome to SSUC, Southminster Steinhauer United Church, where we are spiritual seekers united in community. We're delighted that you've joined us today as we celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day, acknowledging our indebtedness to our land's first peoples, to their cultures, traditions, ceremonies, spirituality, languages, of our Indigenous brothers and sisters whose story is woven into this land. We welcome each of you as you take time to be with us today. In the midst of all that Father's Day is in our lives, celebrating brothers, husbands, fathers, grandfathers, parents, and remembering the ancestors who have gone before us, who are not gone from us, but are gone before us. We honor today all who do the work of fathering, of mentoring, modeling, companioning. While my teammate Christopher New is taking a well-deserved, long time in coming vacation break, I'm joined today in welcoming you by Deb on the piano, Dawn on violin, Heidi and Janice leading us in song, Noah managing all things technical in the booth, and Pam standing in for all of you. However you come to this day, whoever you are, whatever grief or joy you're carrying, whatever the state of your spirit, it's good that you are here and we are here together. And together we will sing and pray and seek wisdom for our living in the midst of these complicated and difficult days. As is our tradition, if you have a candle at the ready, I invite you to light your candle with me. As we light our candles this day, we welcome summer solstice, the gift of long light in our northern hemisphere, celebrating the sun's northern journey, a day that we remember that we are born of light, born to shine proudly with the unique light we each bring to the world, born to honor and protect and cherish the light in one another, born to respect the unique light that shines in every life, in all created beings. We honor the soil beneath our feet, the storied land we each call home, ancestral land deep with memory and tradition, acknowledging its first peoples. For those of us gathered in Edmonton or in SSUC Saskatoon, we make our home on the ancestral lands of Treaty 6 territory with Cree and Métis people who have called this land home for generations, a gathering place and traveling route for so many Indigenous peoples, the Blackfoot, the Dene, Nakota Sioux, adopted homeland to migrants and refugees from so many lands around the world. Whatever our history or our heritage, and whether we live in treaty territories or unceded land, we come this day in search of reconciling ways. as we hear a story this morning, a traditional story of many coastal peoples told by the Slingit author Maria Williams, a story passed down to her by her father. We take this moment to remember the words of Richard Wagamese that you'll see before you on the screen about story. From the moment we're born to the time we continue our spirit journey, we're involved in the creation of the story of our time here. It's what we arrive with. It's all we leave behind. We're not the things we accumulate. We're not the things we deem important. We are story, all of us. What comes to matter then is the creation of the best possible story we can while we're here. You, me, us together. When we can do that, and we can take the time to share those stories with each other, we get bigger inside. We see each other. We recognize our kinship. We change the world, one story at a time. So we hear the story by Maria Williams of how the raven stole the sun.
How Raven Stole the Sun. Story by Maria Williams. Illustrations by Felix Vigil. A long time ago, Raven, or Yael, was pure white, from the tips of his claws to the ends of his wings. He was very striking, like fresh snow in winter. This was so long ago that there were no stars, no moon, and no sun. People lived in total darkness, and their only light was from campfires. Raven was concerned about this. The stars, moon, and sun were kept in large, beautifully carved boxes in a chief's house. The chief was greedy and didn't want to share these wonders with anybody, not even his wife or daughter. Raven knew the chief kept the celestial lights all to himself and began plotting how he could take them away. Raven tried to get into the chief's big house, but was always caught before he could enter. Finally, he came up with a brilliant scheme for stealing the stars, moon, and sun. The chief's daughter was a lovely young woman, and the chief knew that soon she should be ready to have children of her own. This made him happy because he wanted grandchildren very badly, especially a grandson. One day, the daughter was gathering berries and got very thirsty. She found a nice creek flowing with fresh, cool water. Raven quietly followed her, and as she began to scoop up water with her cup, he quickly transformed himself into a small pine needle. Raven drifted into her cup, and the young woman swallowed him. Several months later, the chief's daughter gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. But what the chief and his family didn't know was that the baby was Raven. The chief was very happy and proud. He had always wanted a grandson. The baby cried a lot, but the chief was very patient. One day, the chief noticed the baby was pointing to the box with the stars in it. He cried and cried for it. Finally, the chief got the box of stars down to let his grandson play with it. Raven smiled and played with the box, and when the chief was not looking, Raven opened it. The stars flew out and up into the sky. Grandfather was not pleased to lose his stars to the sky, but his grandson was happy for a little while, and this made him happy. But eventually Raven began to cry again. He cried and pointed to the box containing the moon. The chief remembered what happened the last time, but couldn't stand to see his grandson cry. So he handed him the box with the moon in it. The grandson smiled and played with the box. When the chief looked away, Raven opened the lid. The moon flew out and up into the sky. Raven loved making mischief, but he was growing tired of being a baby. He wanted to be a raven again. He missed his glorious feathers. He missed flying through the air, and he was getting really tired of the chief. But Raven waited because he was so curious about what was in the last box, the biggest box, the most beautiful of the 3 boxes. And so he began to cry. He cried and cried for days. The chief remembered what had happened with the moon and the stars, but he was sad to see his grandson crying. So he handed him the last box, the box containing the sun. Of course, the cunning raven was waiting for this moment. He opened the lid and freed the sun. What a beautiful sight! The sun flew out and up into the sky, and daylight came into the people's lives. Raven was very happy, and now that his curiosity was satisfied, he changed back into a raven. The chief saw the transformation and became very angry. He had been tricked. The chief closed the door to the house and trapped Raven inside. Raven knew the chief was bigger and stronger and would probably kill him. He flew around, frantically trying to find a way out. Finally, he spied a very small smoke hole in the ceiling. He flew up to it and squeezed through, and as he did, the black soot coated his feathers. Raven joyfully burst out into the light of day. Raven was very surprised to see that he was now completely black. From the tip of his claws to the end of his wings, every feather and even his beak were a beautiful shiny black. This was how Raven came to be black, as he remains to this day.
My name is Maria Williams, and I love to introduce myself in the traditional Tlingit fashion. Maria Sean-Pla Williams, Yuhat Duzak, Yel Nak Hatsati, Deshita Nak Hatsati, Dekluidi Yeti Hatsati, Atlin Kwan Ayahat, Anchorage Hachati. And what I said was, my name is Maria Sean-Pla Williams. Sean-Pla is my Tlingit name. I'm of the Raven moiety. I'm of the Deshiton or the Beaver clan, and I'm a child of the killer whale. And we always mention our father's clan as a child of. And of course, we inherit all of our clans, our moieties, our houses are all from our mothers. It's a matrilineal society. And my ancestral villages are Atlin, which is actually inland. It's British Columbia. And I have a couple of things I've worked with the National Museum of the American Indian on, and one of them was a wonderful little fun project I had, which is based on a traditional Tlingit story, How Raven Stole the Sun. And I was a wonderful collaboration with this great artist, Felix Vigil, who's Hickory Apache and Jemez Pueblo from New Mexico. And I always say he had the hard work because he had to do all the original art pieces, and I just got to relate a story that my father told me when I was growing up. And my father, this is a story I think that's common to a lot of the Northwest Coast cultures. So my father is actually that little baby. That's my grandmother, Clara, or Satlandu. And that's my dad when he was a little baby. So I always have to credit my father with the story. And it's been a really fun project, and it makes me so happy when people say how much they enjoyed it. So Gunal Chish to everybody who's enjoyed the story.
NJs don't go, that's hello in Muskogee Creek language. My name is Joy Harjo, and I am the U.S. Poet Laureate. I'm here today to welcome you to the Read Along. It's a special story time with PBS kids and the Little Free Library. Not just any free library, the Little Free Library. They're really cool. I've seen their stuff. I'm so excited to share a poem with you. Remember, and that poem is in this book of poetry called How We Became Human, which is a collection of many different poems. But I thought you might find this poem useful. So it's called Remember, and I wrote this poem because I always need to remember. I mean, you think about, where does poetry come from? Where does art come from? How do those things happen? And a lot of it's study. A lot of us study history and other, stars and all kinds of things, how rocks are made, and we get ideas, and a lot of it is so inspired. It's inspired, just like you can get inspired looking at flowers or plants or ideas. So this poem is called Remember. Remember the sky you were born under. Know each of the star stories. Remember the moon, know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are, red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, red earth, brown earth, we are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk with them, listen to them, they are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember that all is in motion, is growing as you. Remember, remember.
In 2015-2016, SSUC commissioned local Indigenous artist Arthur Gallant to create 7 banners representing what is known by many different names among Indigenous peoples, sometimes called elders' teachings, sometimes called the grandfather's teachings, sometimes called the 7 great laws or the 7 sacred laws, representing the values that are significant to so many Aboriginal peoples, having been thought to originate with the Anishinaabe people, those values of respect, truth, courage, honesty, wisdom, humility, and love. These are the images that surround us in the space where we come to you from this morning. The faces and the words that have grounded so many Indigenous people. And today we hear Rocky Moran from the Enoch Cree Nation, a wisdom keeper in that Treaty 6 nation, share with us what has been passed down to him about the 7 sacred teachings.
Danse nitotemtik, asini oasis nitigasun, maskig sik ochinia. Hello, my friends. My name is Rocky Moran, and I am from the Enoch Cree Nation in Treaty 6 territory. Today, I have the honor of sharing with you all the 7 sacred teachings. These teachings are the guiding principles of how we should live our lives in a respectful and sacred manner to all living things. It is the guideline of our traditional understanding of who we are and our traditional ways in which we conduct ourselves to one another and to ourselves. It should be noted that these teachings originate from our Anishinaabe relatives, the Ojibwe Nation, and these teachings have been widely adopted across Turtle Island. However, not all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit groups acknowledge these teachings and follow these teachings. So it is quite special when we learn these teachings and apply them to our day-to-day lives. So I'm thankful today to have been presented with tobacco, chiste mao, in order to share in a good way these teachings as they have been shared with me and as I've come to understand them. The first teaching is that of honesty. In Cree, we say, Goyesk eta tisuin. This teaching is represented by our relative, Mistapeo is what we call him, commonly known as Sasquatch. It is said that at one time he walked amongst our people and shared the gift of honesty and how it's important to be honest with one another, but especially to be honest with ourselves. The second teaching is that of humility. In Cree, we say, Tapatemsoin. The animal that represents this sacred teaching is the wolf, Mahigan. In order for a wolf to survive, it must work together in a pack and must know its role in order to ensure survival of the family. This must be done in a humble way. This is what the wolf teaches us. The third teaching is that of truth. In Cree, we say, Dapwewin. Dapwewin is important because in order to be truthful and to live a good life, we must honor truth in everything that we do and say. The animal that represents truth is the turtle, Miskanak. It is said that the turtle was there in the beginning when the teachings came to the people, and that the turtle reminds us to always be truthful to these teachings. The fourth teaching is that of love. In Cree, we say, Saagihituin. Love is the most powerful medicine that we were gifted with. The elders will remind us to love one another, Saagihituk, and just as importantly, to love yourself, Saagihiso. The animal that gifts us with love is the eagle, known as Kihiu. With love, anything is possible. The fifth sacred teaching is that of courage. In Cree, we say, Soukitehewin. It is important to have courage in order to face our greatest enemy, ourselves. It is said that the animal that shows us courage is the bear. Specifically, the mother bear, as we know, is very courageous and will stand up to larger bears and others for her cubs. Courage is a virtue that we must all work towards every day. The sixth sacred teaching is that of wisdom. In Cree, we say, Inisoin. Wisdom is not to be confused with knowledge, but rather, wisdom is our experiences throughout life. Wisdom is represented by the animal, the beaver, who requires great wisdom in order to regulate waters, to build dams, and to create a home for its family. The seventh teaching, and for me the most important, is that of respect. In Cree, we say, Manachihuewin. Respect is important in all walks of life, from the animals to the birds to the insects and the plants and the medicines. Respect is the foundation of our ceremonial way of life, and this virtue is represented by the buffalo, whom we call Mustus. Our people have great respect for the buffalo, as it was able to provide everything we needed to survive. One thing I'd like to share is why it's important to offer tobacco. Tobacco is offered in order to receive the teachings in a good way, and that the teachings will stay with you and guide you in your everyday walk. The eagle feather that I'm holding is important to Indigenous people, as the eagle is a highly respected and revered animal. They say the eagle flies high and has great vision, and because of its closeness to Creator, it is able to advocate for us in a good way. The eagle feather teaches us to be respectful, truthful, honest, to have integrity, and to treat each other in a good way. It is said that if we look at an eagle feather, it represents our lives here on earth. From when we are born into our formative years as a child, into our adult years, becoming parents, and then becoming grandparents, great-grandparents, and back to this pure stage of life. And then we continue our journey on from here. This is what some of the elders remind us of when we see the eagle feather. I'd like to take a moment to talk about protocol, specifically tobacco, and why it is important to offer tobacco when seeking knowledge. The old people remind us that tobacco speaks on our behalf. They would say, "Epixquis tamagoyak." When requesting knowledge, whether it's through stories, songs, dance, art, tobacco should be offered in exchange for those teachings. Because the teachings are alive and have a life force of their own, tobacco will ensure that these teachings stay with us in our everyday walk.
We strengthen our intention to live these values as we offer the words of a Cree man from Fisher River Cree Nation in Manitoba. The words of Stan McKay. Stan was the 34th moderator of the United Church of Canada from the years 1994 to 1997, and he has gifted us with this prayer, which I invite us to offer with one another today. We come with thanksgiving for our very breath, the warmth of the sun and the sustaining waters, for life all around us, the plants, soft grasses and sheltering trees, for the ones that crawl, those that swim and those that fly, for the four-legged and the two-legged, all our relations. We celebrate the diversity in creation as reflected in the four winds from the four directions. We especially honor the many peoples with their many gifts for understanding our shared life on the earth. We strive to live out the 7 sacred teachings: respect, love, honesty, courage, humility, wisdom, and truth. These teachings enable us to live in harmony with ourselves, with our neighbors, and all the created earth. We all remember the dove. We all remember the ancient story we inherit from our Jewish roots. The story of Noah, who survived an epic flood by building an ark to offer shelter in a drowning world. When the rains stopped, Noah released a dove again and again till it came back with a green leaf in its mouth, and then was sent again. And when it didn't return, Noah concluded there must be dry land on which to survive. It must be safe to leave the ark. But we have forgotten the raven in the story. The dove wasn't the first bird Noah released. The first bird that Noah set free was a raven. And the raven, unlike the dove, never returned. The story says that the raven went to and fro until the waters were dried up. In the world of that archetypal story, a story of starting over, a reboot, a reset, a beginning again. In that ancient archetypal flood story, the raven circled tirelessly, knowingly, as with trust and courage that the waters would recede. Creation would continue. Life would survive, perhaps even thrive. While the dove returned again and again to the ark until it could find sanctuary in treetops. The raven, released from the ark, never returned. Why is it that the lead character in the story, the ancient character of this literature, Noah, couldn't trust the raven's wisdom. We've celebrated the dove and the rainbow, symbols of a story of survival, symbols of a covenant with creation. But we forget the raven and neglect its wisdom and its teachings. And perhaps we have forgotten something very essential for life. In the first century of the Common Era, the friends of Jesus remember him teaching them to consider the raven, to consider how the raven lives in a trusting way, trusting its instincts, trusting its wisdom, trusting its truth, trusting its interdependence with creation, trusting the goodness of life. The friends of Jesus remember him saying words like, the raven doesn't plant or harvest, doesn't have storehouses or barns. This creature teaches us how to be creature, how to know ourselves as valued and essential in the web of life, as part of the beloved community, as children in the kingdom of creation. In the legend passed down to Indigenous peoples, in tribal tales like the one Maria Williams' father told her, the raven was a clever hero who found a subversive way to restore the stars and the moon and the sun to a community that was held in darkness by its leader. The raven freed what had been stolen from the people, restored what was needed for life to continue, not for one, not for some, but for all. In the world of that story, the raven liberated the light that had been taken hostage by forces of greed and forces of power. Is this not our work now? To liberate light, to protect and cherish the light in one another. In the world of these traditional stories, were we to consider the raven, perhaps we might find a way to liberate the light of respect and love, the light of honesty and courage, the light of humility and wisdom and truth. And then we might begin to restore right relationship, reviving perished dreams, stolen from so many people. Let's consider how it is that we might live this day, that it might begin to be so. while we are with each other this morning, I want to share just a few invitations and a few bits of news from our community with you. There's an opportunity to engage our theme from this morning with each other on Zoom immediately following this gathering at about 11:15. This will be our last opportunity to gather before we take a break for the summer and return to these kinds of informal conversations again in the fall. You'll find ways to connect to that Zoom call on our website, so please join us if you can. We'd love to share some time and conversation to go a little deeper with the themes we've been exploring this morning. Also an invitation to gather in some smaller groups outdoors this summer to connect with some new SSUC friends in the Edmonton area or to connect with old friends. If you haven't already done so, if you haven't received an invitation yet, please contact the church office at in the ways that you see on your screen. We would be delighted to see you be part of that gathering with friends. No agenda, just a chance to visit and see one another and share a little bit of informal conversation together. We want to share some news from our board. We want to share what we are seeing as a bit of a path forward through the summer and hopefully into the fall, with an aiming to resume in-person gatherings in Edmonton and in Saskatoon in September. In Edmonton, we're aiming for Sunday, September the 12th. During the summer months, our office will remain closed, as will our facility. We'll be welcoming a return to our grounds for some outdoor programs to build community with one another over the course of the summer, and continuing our online community and support for our online community via live streaming and video conferencing, even when we return to in-person gatherings. And I want to say a particular word to those of you who join us online who perhaps don't live in the Edmonton area or perhaps have never connected in with us in person in the facility in Edmonton, or don't live in Saskatoon or haven't connected yet in person with the Saskatoon community. We want to assure you of how important you are in this community, that you belong, and we are committed to continuing to bring live stream gatherings to you. And we would like to know a little bit more about those of you who have come to be part of our community over these pandemic months. If you would be in contact with us by email to offer us ways of contacting you by email or snail mail or telephone contact. If you would share with us how it is that you've come to connect with us and what it is that you might hope would continue besides the live streaming of spiritual gatherings each week, if there's other programming that you are hoping to continue to participate in as in-person gatherings in the Saskatoon and Edmonton area return. And we extend our gratitude to all of you for the ways that you support us, whether that is by your presence online, by your financial support, by your volunteer hours. If you are able to support us financially, you'll see on the screen a variety of ways that you can do that. Every gift, however small or large, is valued and makes a difference to what it is we're able to do together as a spiritual community. We have just sung the commitment of our light. We go into this day, into the long light of this solstice day, to honor the light in one another, to cherish the light in one another, to be open and learn from the light in one another, to live our noblest task and trade. May you be well this week. May you be safe. May you celebrate these days of Indigenous Peoples Month. May we be open to the grace of celebrating, fathering, the work of parenting. May we know the wisdom of the raven, that we all are essential to the web of life. And so we take our strand to strengthen it this day, to live in ways that are true to our heart, to our soul. We go alone and we go together.